Hello and welcome. This is my weekly Q&A session. Ask me anything. So there are some questions that were left over from last week, and I'd like to start with those. But if you're new to my work, I'm Jennifer Roig-Francolí. I'm the creator of the Art of Freedom for Musicians. I'm a professional violinist, have been all my life for decades, many decades. And I'm also the host of the Musicians Mind Body Practice Tribe on Facebook. And I teach the Alexander Technique online. I have group classes and I do private coaching for musicians of all kinds, from superstars to beginner amateurs. I don't care what skill level you're at. I don't care what instrument you play. Basically, I am helping people play their primary instrument. I call this the primary instrument, the mind, body, self. We're learning how to coordinate our thoughts with our movements so that everything that we do can become easier, especially playing our instruments and having more fun with that. So let's dive in. I want to say hello to everybody showing up. Hello, Kay and Bob and Angel and Nina. Hey, Nina, it's nice to have you. Nina says, I don't often get to catch this. Glad it's working today. Yes, I'm glad too. And I appreciated your posts over there in the Musicians Mind Body Practice Tribe. Sounds like you got through a challenging situation pretty darn well. Good job. If anybody's here or watching the replay who does not know about my free Facebook group, come on over. Here's the link. Join us. We have a great time. We're talking about all kinds of mind-body issues and anything related to music making. Okay, so I'm going to start with a question, which is, actually, Bob, you're here. Bob sent me a question. He asks, do you have any suggestions about how to ignite that spark of inspiration? How to invoke it on demand rather than passively awaiting it? I have an image of an alert sentinel calling forth something lurking in the shadows. I love that. I love that idea of calling forth something from the shadows. However, I would actually tend to think of it as something that is just dying to inspire us, not something lurking. So I'm going to talk about that. First, I want to apologize for my voice. If anybody knows me, I'm just getting over a cold, and so my voice doesn't sound like me to me. But anyway, just putting that out there. Otherwise, I'm feeling great, much, much better than last week. Okay, so how to get inspired. Wow, that is a huge topic, but I'm going to talk about it from my own personal experience, and which is always including the Alexander Technique, which is a mind-body discipline. It's an awareness discipline that helps us get out of our own way. So everything we do is easier. So in the context of inspiration, I've been thinking about this a lot lately for myself. I'm performing a concert in less than a couple weeks. And so I've been practicing every day, and I don't always get inspired right away. And honestly, I don't enjoy practicing if I'm not inspired, so usually I don't. So it is an important topic because I want to practice a lot. And yet, if I'm not feeling inspired and I don't practice, then I kind of have to figure out how to get inspired, right? So all I could say is that we can consciously set up the conditions that are going to be the most conducive to calling forth inspiration. Now, I happen to be intrigued by the old idea of the muse or the genius, and that's like you're talking about something waiting in the shadows to inspire you. So it's almost, I like this idea because it means my job is not to get inspired or to do something to make myself inspired. My job is really to get out of the way for the inspiration that's just waiting to come to me. So if you imagine, you don't have to believe in a muse or a fairy godmother out there or a genius spirit, although I think those are fun things to play with. Whether they're true or not, I'm not the best person to ask about that. But I do like the idea because it means that something, and I do believe this, there is something bigger than me that I could call spirit or God or inspiration with a capital I. There's something, an energy with a capital E, right? I don't think you have to believe in this as God, but everyone has a word that they can tap into to call this something. We all have a sense of this something. And actually, when I grew up, I was taught to let Bach, right? To Bach come through my music when I'm playing Bach, to allow the composer's ideas to come through, almost like we're channeling a composer. Now, I don't think of it that way for myself, but for some of you out there, you might like that idea of channeling the composer. It's kind of a little, you can think about it however you want. You've got to find the thoughts that work for you, and that really is a very Alexandrian way of thinking, to find the thoughts that are constructive, that spark your imagination. That is so important, to spark your imagination. So personally, I like this idea of something bigger than me just waiting for me to get out of the way and open up to receive that inspiration. And I love the word inspiration because it's like that, it has the word, or the root, the same root of the word spirit is in inspiration. And so allowing the spirit of the music, or however you want to think of it, to just come down into me as a vessel and as a conduit, as a channel, as an instrument of that idea that's coming through, that musical idea, whether it's a sound or a note or a phrase or a piece, right? So my job, our job as musicians, the way I understand it, is to do whatever we can do, like I said, to set up the conditions for that process to happen. And that, for me, means doing my Alexander technique, constructive thinking, which are specific ways of thinking that quiet my mind and kind of get the negative thoughts or the bored thoughts or the distracted thoughts or distracting thoughts out of the way, to clear myself so that this special something, that spark, that light, that spirit, that whatever, can come through me and inspire me. And I do like that idea of a muse, of there being like a little genie out there that's just waiting, hovering up there to like download amazing things through me. But this is not just, this is something really serious, by the way. This is not just a joke. Okay. What I mean is, we have a huge responsibility as artists if we want to really make great art. And the ego has no place in that kind of artistic production. I mean, the ego that puffs itself up and takes possession of, oh, I am doing this. It's like, no, when I make music and I get out of the way and something really special happens and I'm inspired, it's not me doing it. My only role is to get out of the way and let the ideas come and let my brain, my unconscious, control the body mechanisms that have learned how to do whatever it is I'm doing. But it's a big responsibility to stay out of the way and not, get arrogant about any of it, just not to think that it's you doing it. Something is happening through us that is much more powerful than we can even imagine. So that's my answer to that question, Bob. I hope that was helpful. There's a lot more that I could say about that. Obviously, it's a huge topic that is very near and dear to my heart. I'm actually curious to get your responses to this one before I go on. I'm coming over to the comments now. By the way, hello, Joe. Joe is here, and Alexandra. Hey, it's great to have you here. And Nina says, oh, here, and also Miriam is here. Welcome. That's a new name that I don't recognize. Maybe your first live video? By the way, whoever is here for the first time, I would just love it if you just type in first time. Okay, then I could give you a special shout out, even if you're watching the replay 1 month from now. I'd love to know who's watching which videos for the first time, okay? So that would be great. Okay, now Nina says, I love this view of music. It's not about me. I just need to stay out of the way and be a vehicle for something beautiful to happen. Yes, yes, that is exactly what I'm trying to say. Yes, I'm glad you like that. Nina also says, your comments just reminded me, the Shakers always thought of their beautiful music as being received, yes, rather than being composed. The tune and or words for a hymn was something that was sent to and received by the person who just needed to be open to receiving the gift rather than an effort to compose or create. Yes, this is exactly what I'm talking about here. And it's not at all a new concept. In fact, it's a very, very old concept, and I think it's because it's true. So the true things have been around forever because they're just reality, right? But yes, and it's in all cultures too, this idea of something coming to us. Now, again, you don't have to believe this as something coming to you from outside. You can also think of it as something that is really deeply essentially you, or something that your unconscious is bringing, you want to get out of the way, so your unconscious imagination or your unconscious creativity can rise up to the surface so that you can become aware of it. That's another way of thinking about exactly the same thing. So honestly, it doesn't matter so much whether you think of it as outside or from inside, from something that is other than you or something that is essentially you. You've got to find what works for you, but in all cases without exception, our job is to find a way to get out of the way, to let that creative flow happen. From inside, from outside, through us. It always happens through the mind, body, and it comes out the musical instrument, whether that's the voice or the violin or the kazoo. Okay? Hello, Bev Bedford. Bev says, I think I got into that way of thinking, which was why I gave up learning violin. Oh, I'm curious about why that way of thinking caused you to give up learning the violin. That's interesting. I've been playing the violin since I was 4, and my parents are musicians, and they tell me that I was adamant that I needed the violin when I was 2. So this has just always been a part of me. So it surprises me that thinking in this way could cause you to give it up. That's very interesting to me. I'd love to know more, Bev, if you want to share any of that with me here publicly or privately. Anybody can always, by the way, feel totally free to message me privately about anything. If you have any questions that you don't want to share publicly or you don't want me to call you out here, just send me a private message or an email, and I do my best to respond to absolutely every email, every message that I get. Bob says, this makes sense, especially getting out of our own way. Can you expand on letting our unconscious mind take care of the mechanical learned skills? Well, that actually flows into another question that you asked me, Bob, just recently. I'm just going to pull it up here if I have it. It's sort of related. You asked me about repetition being needed to ingrain an action into a habit, which then becomes an automatic response. Yes, absolutely. And you also mentioned, or or maybe this was me that said this on the, I forget whether this was my answer to you or your question, but basically it's about how habits are created. So yes, the unconscious mind takes care of the mechanical learned skills for sure. But when we're first learning, so let's say this is question number 2, okay? Question number 2, if I'm going to simplify it, is what's the role of the unconscious in taking care of mechanical learned skills like musical technique? And what does that have to do with repetition and learning, turning something into a habit? Okay, so my answer to this one is that yes, the unconscious mind is in charge of the coordination in our systems. So an easy way to think about this is, for instance, right now I'm talking and I do not, thank God, need to think about exactly what to do with my tongue or my lips or my throat or my lungs or my body as a whole in speaking, because it has become, since I was very small, an unconsciously guided habitual action, right? So the same goes for learning an instrument. And whenever you're learning a new skill, like speaking or playing an instrument, it obviously takes, first you need to be consciously learning whatever it is. It's different though when you're a pre-verbal baby or toddler. Okay, so the learning happens on a non-verbal level, whereas as we get older, we use words and the verbal teachings to learn something, to take in information. But once the information, and babies and toddlers, for instance, we learn a lot visually by imitating others around us. So there's usually information that is taken in from outside. You're watching other people walk. I mean, there have been actually studies on people who did not see other people walking and they grew up walking on all fours. These are humans, right? So most of us have people that we imitate who are walking on 2 legs, right? And most of us imitate other people who are speaking and who are actually literally teaching us how to speak. So when you're learning a new skill, you need to, it's pretty conscious. You're taking in information and you're trying things out. You're experimenting with new ideas. You're trying it this way. You're trying it that way. At first you're babbling. You're trying all the different sounds before you fit them together to make sense. It takes a while to learn how to talk or to walk. You've got to fall down many times and you have to kind of learn to balance this body on 2 little feet, right? So lots of falling over, lots of experimenting, lots of mistakes, you could say, but they're not really mistakes. It's just part of the learning process, right? So this whole time, your brain is on fire. It's like you're taking in all this information, psychophysical information, kinesthetic information that is, and there's feedback. It's like you try something out and you fall, right? Well, your brain registers, okay, when I do XYZ, I fall. Okay, so you try it again and maybe you do it a little differently. So QRS, I fall too. Okay, new information. So your unconscious mind is processing all of this for you, right? And repetition, you're honing it, you're doing it more and more. Yes, when you repeat mistakes, you get better at them. But if you're in the process of learning, you're never going to repeat the same mistake twice in exactly the same way. So it depends very much on your intention. So let me just wrap up this answer because I could talk about this all day. But the Alexander technique teaches us how to observe habits that we have developed that we are probably not even aware of. Most of our habits we're not even aware of. And many of our habits actually include a lot of excess tension in them. We've learned them in ways that incorporated a lot of excess tension. So Alexander technique teaches us how to observe ourselves to discover what we're actually doing. And then there's an unlearning process, which is very simple. It does take time, but it's a very simple process. And the process is simple because we just need to learn how to do one thing, which is to get curious about what's actually happening in such a way that we're thinking in a constructive way. Okay, so we're learning how to get, again, I'm saying it again from before, but we're learning how to get our conscious thinking mind that overthinks and overanalyzes and tries to coordinate and control everything. We've got to get that out of the way, because I don't know consciously exactly how my muscles are being used to talk, but my unconscious knows exactly what it's doing. And that's why I can repeat the same words and I can make myself understood every day, right? I can repeat this, and yet every time it's different because my unconscious knows how to coordinate that. So yes, speaking is a learned skill, just like playing the violin or the gamba is a learned skill. So you learn it consciously first, but you have to trust, and this is the number one key I'm going to leave you with on this topic. You have to trust that the unconscious mind, the brain, actually, it's not even the mind, it's really this unconscious part. There are deeper parts of our brain that organize the whole mind, body, self in ways that we are not really aware of with our conscious thinking minds. The conscious thinking mind is very good at getting in the way and trying to control things that it's not supposed to be able to control, and that's when we get into trouble. So I hope that's a helpful answer to that question, Bob. Okay, hello, Timothy. Timothy is here. Great. And again, please say hello if you're watching the replay, even if it's next year. And just type in the box, if it's your first time, just write, "This is my first live video with you." And it would be great to be able to interact. So let me see if there are any questions, any other questions coming on right here. Bev says, oh, she's following up. I see. Bev said, I think this got into the way of thinking, which I got into that way of thinking, which was why I gave up learning violin. And then she clarifies, I mean, the ego getting in the way. Now I totally understand, Bev. Yeah, that's very, very interesting that you said that. So you discovered that your ego was getting into the way of your performance, and that's why you gave up learning the violin. That is really, really, really interesting, and it is actually, it's a little related to why I gave up my solo career when I was 19. So there's a lot that's very interesting about that. And yeah, I would actually I'd love to hear more about Bev if you want to share more. Yeah, I can resonate with that. Okay, Bob, I see you have another question here. That is great. I'm going to keep that one aside, though, probably for next week or for later, because I do have some other questions that came to me from the Mind Body Practice Tribe. Let me go over here and see what else is coming up. Actually, there was a big question on, someone said, I cannot express much emotion with music. And I had a lot of people this week actually ask me that. Some of my Alexander Musicians students in my group class, some private coaching students, all online, of course, but I've had a lot of people asking me about this concept of expressing the emotion through the music and not getting tight in the process, and how to let that emotion come through. I'm going to actually, since that is another huge topic, I'm going to save that for Thursday. So just a little preview. That is going to be the topic for Thursday's video at 2 p.m. Eastern, where I talk just on one topic. That's going to be it. I love that topic. It's actually related to today's first question. So I just need to come on that. Oops, not that. Sorry, I'm just pulling up the questions that I had saved, and I'm being slow to find them. Okay. Here. Okay, here's actually an older question that was from Joe, and you probably even forget that you asked me this, but at one point you asked me about recentering. So the question is actually about when you're practicing, do I stop to recenter myself or do I do it while playing, right? And then there's another question about mind wandering and doubt monster attacks. Okay, this is actually 3 questions. So let me talk first about stopping to, all right, so the question is, when I am practicing, should I be stopping to recenter myself, or should I keep recentering myself as I'm playing? And I have just, this is really weird now, I've lost the video. This is really weird. I can't see anything. I can't see the video. It seems like I've disappeared. Here I am. Sorry. Okay, so here's my answer to this question, Joe. You can do both. This is an easy question. So Joe is actually now in my online Alexander Musicians group, and he's doing some private coaching with me as well. And so, Joe, you know about constructive thinking in Alexander terms. But for those of you who don't know what constructive thinking is, it is just a very, very simple way of using your conscious mind by thinking to think in such a way that helps you quiet your mind, actually. And when you quiet your mind and quiet your body so that it's not contracting with anxiety or excess tension, that's another way of saying centering yourself. That's language that I like to use for myself. I am more centered when I'm letting go of that excess tension, because then my body can come back into its natural shape, its natural design, natural energetic flow. So that's what I think of when we're talking about centering. Okay, so the constructive thinking that we do, I can give everybody here a little taste of like a first step in constructive thinking. For anybody here who has no idea what we're talking about, I recommend that you learn something called the cycle. It's a 2-minute primal Alexander etude developed by Neo Morales. I'm just putting the link here. This is just to help you develop this practice. It's a free 5-day challenge. You'll get the video. There's also a video on YouTube where I teach the cycle, in case anybody wants that. And yes, Joe says, I've come a long way since asking that, for sure. But I know that many people out here could benefit from this question, so I really wanted to read it today. So as you're starting to learn how to do constructive thinking, the first way to do it would be to just really pause and ask yourself, where else, where in my body do I notice a bit of ease? Or where else do I seem a bit easy? Where else do I seem a bit easy? You can do it right now. Just pause. Where else do I seem a bit easy? Okay, so that's like constructive thinking 101, and that is something that in the beginning of your adventure, bringing more ease into your playing and in your movements, you would pause. In fact, I usually don't even introduce constructive thinking into a person's musical playing until they have a solid foundation in my approach to the Alexander technique, which, if you're curious, you can do my 30-day intro package program that gives you a very comprehensive introduction to the Alexander technique. So I would have people do constructive thinking away from their instruments for a while first, but then once you start introducing the instrument, yes, you pause. Rests are great for pausing and centering yourself. And then when that becomes very easy and you get it and you can just flash on your constructive thinking instantly and you can do it really, really quickly, Alexander called it quickening the conscious mind. When you can do that easily, then you start to discover how you can do it while you're actually playing. But that's more advanced. So I teach that to, again, in my Alexander Musicians group classes and for my private coaching clients, all online. If anybody here is interested in the intro package that I was talking about, where you go beyond the cycle etude that I told you about a moment ago, this is very popular. I'm having a lot of people have a lot of success with the content in my introductory package. Check it out and let me know if you're interested. I do give scholarships, just FYI. Okay, so that's Joe's first question. I'm going to pop over and answer the second one that is about mind wandering. Mind wandering. Oh, by the way, hi Barb, glad you're here. So this question is about mind wandering. So it's just a word. It's a hyphenated word, right? So I'm going to flesh out the question a little bit. What should I do? Oh, sorry, I need water. This is a remnant of my cold. 1 second, I need to reach over and grab my water. I'm almost better, but still have this going on here. Okay, so question, what should I do if my mind wanders while I'm practicing? Well, first of all, celebrate that you noticed it. Because if you noticed it, your mind's not wandering anymore. So have a party. It is fantastic if you notice your mind wandering. So, and then second step, do not criticize yourself for mind wandering. How many of you out there criticize yourselves when you notice that your mind was wandering? And this is a serious question. I want answers. So show me, put them in there. Show me. Fess up. Does your mind wander when you practice? Why for yes and for no? Let's get some feedback here. I'm going to tell you a very short story about my mind wandering. It happened on stage once. I was playing, and some of you have heard this story before, my students, but I was playing the Chanson Poème, which is a challenging solo violin piece with orchestra in front of hundreds of people. And my mind was out to lunch, but I didn't notice it until after the first page. Or at least most of the first page. All of a sudden, I kind of woke up and realized I was playing this demanding piece on stage in front of people, and I almost freaked out. I did not screw up. I was lucky. I was able to just keep going, and nobody noticed, but I was seriously freaked out, and I wanted to never have that experience again. That was pre-Alexander technique, quite a bit pre-Alexander technique, and if I hadn't had to perform it again the next night, which thank God I did, but if I hadn't had to do that again, it would have been much harder for me to get back into performing as a soloist from memory, because it was so scary for me to realize that my mind had been wandering and out to lunch for so long there in public performing as a soloist. So that does not happen to me anymore because of the Alexander technique. The Alexander technique is the perfect antidote to mind wandering. And again, if this is a habit, and I had cultivated that habit unwittingly since I was a child for a couple of reasons. My parents didn't push me or force me, and yet I was expected to practice every day. And sometimes I didn't want to, right? Like most kids. And yet I still had to do it. And so I learned how to read a magazine while I was on autopilot. Thankfully, my mom caught me quick and I didn't do that again. But I learned how to play concertos while reading a book, right? I was a big reader and I didn't want to practice. I wanted to read my book. But I was cultivating a bad habit of not being fully present with what I was doing. So I highly recommend that you do not unwittingly cultivate this habit by trying to do something else while you're practicing. But again, don't criticize yourself if you find that your mind has wandered. It's just a habit and you can do something about it. So do something about it, all right? And this is where I get serious. I have a solution for you, but you've got to do it, right? The solution is unabashedly the Alexander technique, because it is a way to become aware of your habits, and it's a way to undo those habits in a way that goes to the root of them, and it's something that is repeatable, and you learn a heck of a lot about yourself and how to make what you're doing focused, concentrated, but without excess tension. Because most of the time, I mean, I'm sure you can relate. If you find that your mind has wandered, or you're kind of spacey or out to lunch, what do? You focus, right? It's like, hey, Jennifer, I have to be concentrating. Like, concentrate. You talk to yourself and say, come on, pay attention, right? Does this sound familiar? And notice my body is shutting down and getting tight and getting tense, because I'm like, okay, I have to concentrate now, right? That's not good either, because if you bring that kind of concentrated, narrow focus into your music making, you're going to get very good at playing music with a lot of excess tension that you're not even aware of. You do not want that. I promise you, you do not want to bring that kind of concentrated tension into what you're doing, because I mean, down the road, you can even injure yourself physically by doing that. So Alexander was actually very much against the typical ways that we think of as concentration. I have different ways to think about concentration, which are much more centering and open, yet very focused. I'm not going to get into that right now. But that's my answer to the topic of mind wandering. Just notice that it happens, celebrate, do not criticize yourself, and then do something about it. Do something about it, and that something is so simple, okay? You can learn, again, learn the cycle, if nothing else. If you don't learn anything else about the Alexander technique, at least learn the cycle, because it has the basic element that you need to bring yourself back. Basically, when your mind wanders, your mind has wandered and you are no longer aware of your body. We need to bring our conscious awareness back to the mind-body self in the present moment, and that's the cure for mind wandering. The Alexander technique is a very, very powerfully effective way to teach you how to do this consistently and on a very, very subtle level, but in a way that's very simple and easy to do. So I highly recommend it. Ask me more if you want to know more about this. Bob says, I think sometimes I deliberately let my mind wander, if that's what it is. I regularly play in an environment filled with distractions beyond my control. I will gaze off into the distance outdoors, aware that the audience is there, but not focusing on that. That's totally fine. I don't think of that necessarily as the same kind of mind wandering or distraction. To me, what you're describing, if I'm correct, seems to be more like you're including conscious awareness of your environment, and I think that's a very desirable thing. Very often we're taught to narrow our focus only on one thing. I was taught to stare at the contact point of my bow on the strings, and I was taught to stare at my fingers. There's nothing wrong with looking at those places, but there is something wrong with looking at those places in a way that is narrowing your focus to the exclusion of awareness of your environment. So I'm always encouraging my students to expand their field of awareness. Okay, so when you're including your environment, and on stage, this is very important to connect with your audience, to include them, even visually, to kind of look at them and say, hey out there, let's do this thing together, rather than blocking the audience out, which so many performers feel like they need to do when they have performance anxiety. I have a different way to work with that, which is finding a way to include others in your experience. So that's, again, another topic. But yes, I like that, Bob. I'm giving you a little like there. Okay, and thank you for putting your responses in there, everybody. I see several Y's for yeses. Great. Okay, last question is about the doubt monsters. And I'm going to bring up the question again here, and hopefully I'll be able to get back easily. Excuse me. Doubt monsters. Okay, a couple people actually asked about the doubt monsters. I'm not going to give everybody's name here, but it's a very, very popular topic. Doubt monsters or self-limiting beliefs. Okay, so what are the doubt monsters and how do we keep them at bay? I have a whole teaching in one of my online courses about the doubt monsters that helps people with performance anxiety. In case you want to know more about it, ask me. So the doubt monsters are this, of course, I made them up, right? The doubt monsters are my little game, my imagination made up to explain what's going on in a way that is a little fun. And there are some interesting analogies that I think ring true for the reality of the situation. Okay, so doubt monsters are what you have to confront if you're experiencing performance anxiety. For instance, let's say okay, let's take my experience actually, since I have a concert coming up on September 28th. Okay, and we're talking about doubt monsters, and those two things together in my mind right now conjure up the existence of these imaginary doubt monsters. All right, so all of a sudden I'm starting to feel a little extra tension in my throat. I'm noticing that my left upper arm is getting tighter and now my right arm, and so I'm just allowing myself to go with it so I can talk to you about it. On my own, by myself, I would never even let it get this far, okay? But, okay, I have this concert coming up on the 28th, and doubt monsters are attacking me, and I am getting tight. And if I exaggerate it, this is what it feels like on the inside, and it's like, I don't want to do it. So doubt monsters try to tell you, the doubt in doubt monsters is self-doubt, by the way. It's not doubt about whether it's going to work out or not, or if you're going to mess up or not. Ultimately, it's about self-doubt. So what's the antidote to self-doubt? Self-confidence. Okay. Now, I believe that we are naturally self-confident, but things tend to happen to us in life that knock us down and cause us to question whether we are competent enough to do whatever it is we're setting out to do. Sometimes other people in our lives in our past have put us down, minimized what we can do, or we've imitated others who put themselves down. And there are so many people in our experience that are not self-confident, and we pick up all those energies and take them on, and so we learn how to have self-doubt, right? But if self-confidence is natural, I mean, look at a toddler. How much self-doubt is in a 2-year-old when they're running around having a great time? Or even if they're having a temper tantrum, they're not doubting themselves. They're like, I want that candy. I have no doubt about it, and I just don't understand why you're not giving it to me, because you should. I deserve it. So toddlers, little babies, there is no self-doubt there. I believe self-doubt is learned, and therefore it can be unlearned. Now, with the Alexander technique, you don't have to analyze all the things that contributed to your self-doubt, right? I don't need to know, okay, my mother did this when I was 5, and oh yes, I watched my uncle talk to so-and-so like this about me, or I had that terrible performance when I was 11 and it was a disaster. No, we don't have to know any of that. That's the good news. You don't have to go back into the past even for 1 second. All you have to do is be aware that your self-doubt is creeping in. Those are little doubt monsters coming into your house. So you just notice it and like, well, I don't want that. Okay, then I do my constructive thinking. All right? I don't feed them. I don't kick them out. They're like, oh, okay. It's like as if I had a little doubt monster settle in on my couch back there. I'd be like, oh, that's an ugly thing. Ah, well, it'll leave. Bye. Like, hello, goodbye. I don't really want you there, but I'm not going to deal with you right now. It'll leave. If you don't feed it, it'll leave. But you can't just not feed it. You have to feed yourself the things that are going to help you get back to your natural self-confidence. All that means is you need to get out of the way. You need to undo the thinking that's causing the self-doubt. Don't indulge in it. Don't feed it, right? That's where Alexander, constructive thinking is absolutely invaluable. I don't know of anything that's better. There are other ways to do this, of course, but this is one of the best ways, quickest, most effective that I know. And that's the type of thing that I teach in my Alexander Musicians group classes online and in my private coaching. So you have to trust that self-confidence is in there, because it's in everyone. It was in you when you were a baby. It was in you when you were a toddler. You need to recognize that you've learned to think in ways that undermine that. And all you need to do is stop thinking that way and think in a way that is constructive instead. That's Alexander, constructive thinking. Okay? So if you want to learn the specific ways to do that in an Alexandrian fashion, please don't hesitate to message me or email me. I will answer everybody's questions. I'm here to help, and I would love it if you want to know more. Just ask me and I will give you options, okay? Also, if anybody wants to just get on the phone sometime and have a chat, if you are interested in learning more, we can schedule a personal consultation for free. I do those. I call them discovery sessions. I send you a simple questionnaire to get to know a little bit about your situation, and people actually really enjoy filling out that questionnaire because it makes them think about themselves in a new way, makes them kind of realize the areas of their lives where they need a little extra help, and also the things that are working well. So just filling out the questionnaire can be helpful in itself. So if you would like to schedule a discovery session with me, please just email me or private message me here and we can set something up. I'm more than happy to do that for you. And here is my email address. I'm just typing it in here for anybody who wants to email me. All right, great. So I think that's about it for today. Hello, Robin, I'm just finishing, but I hope that you'll have a chance to watch the replay. And I do have an assistant now who is helping me to write down what the questions were in my Q&A sessions with the time markings. So I will get those onto this video as soon as I get them, probably later today, possibly tomorrow. And then you can always come back and review the whole video with the time markers and you'll see which questions we answered to make it easier for all of you. Right, and if you're not on my newsletter list, on my email list, then I would suggest that you sign up because I send all kinds of reminders about the videos and gosh, sometimes Spanish comes first. Resumen. What's a resumen? Like an outline of what I've been doing and updates and things like that. So you could get on my newsletter list if you're not on it yet. Just email me and ask for that. Okay, great. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And I will be here on this page again, my Facebook business page, Jennifer Roig-Francolí, at 2 p.m. on Thursday, when this week I will be talking about emotions, how to experience strong emotions in your music while not letting it interfere with your body so that you're not reacting and getting all tight because it's so emotional. You can't play like that. Or you can, but it's not going to be as good. So that's the topic for Thursday. I hope you can join me live 2 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. And come on over to the Musicians Mind Body Practice Tribe. If you're not a member yet, you've got to sign up. There's nothing to sign up. Actually, just come on over and you just have to apply for membership. It's free. Okay? Come on over. We can continue the discussion on any of this in the tribe. You can always post questions in there. If anything today struck your fancy or you thought it was particularly useful or interesting, I would just be thrilled if you'd go over to the tribe right now and start a thread on that topic. That would be really fun, and then you'd have more conversation over there. Okay, thanks. Happy practicing, and enjoy allowing your muse to inspire you, and lots of love. Bye.